On the morning of October 9, 1856, beneath the cast-iron balconies of the Montgomery Cotton Exchange, a woman was sold for what would equal more than $412,000 in today's money. The auctioneer's hammer fell 23 times before the room finally went quiet, and when the sale ended, the winning bidder leaned forward and vomited into a brass spittoon before signing the bill of sale with shaking hands. No newspaper recorded the transaction, no ledger survived to explain it, and the woman herself did not utter a single word during the entire process. She stood on the auction platform with her gaze fixed on something no one else could see, wearing an expression witnesses later struggled to describe. They said it looked like a smile, but not quite. More like the face of someone watching a trap snap shut exactly when she knew it would. The price shattered every known record in Alabama's history of human commerce. It exceeded the combined value of 3 productive plantations. It represented more wealth than most men in that room would earn in their entire lives. And yet 6 different buyers fought for her, with a desperation that bordered on madness, pushing the price higher in increments that made no financial sense, driven by no logic except the terrifying belief that whoever owned this woman would possess something far more valuable than money. What kind of secret could justify such an impossible sum? What knowledge could turn a human being into the most expensive piece of property ever sold south of the Mason-Dixon line? And why did 3 of the men who bid on her that morning die under mysterious circumstances within 18 months, while 2 others fled Alabama forever, abandoning their plantations, their families, and their reputations as if running from something worse than ruin or shame? Before we continue with the story Montgomery tried desperately to erase, we need you with us. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because the stories uncovered here are the ones powerful people worked for generations to bury. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what you think this woman's impossible secret might have been. We're building a community that refuses to let these truths stay hidden. Now, let us return to that October morning when something stepped onto the Montgomery auction block that should never have been there. Montgomery in 1856 was a city intoxicated by cotton wealth and convinced it could never fall. The Alabama River carried paddle-wheel steamers stacked with bales bound for mills in Manchester and Boston. Elegant homes along Dexter Avenue housed families whose fortunes had been wrung from Delta soil by the labor of people they legally owned but never truly understood. The city's 28,000 residents divided themselves neatly into categories: white and black, free and enslaved, powerful and powerless. Yet these divisions were far more fragile than anyone wanted to admit. The Cotton Exchange stood on Commerce Street, a Greek revival building with towering columns meant to suggest ancient grandeur, though it often felt more like a stage set for a drama about empire. Inside, the auction floor could comfortably hold 200 men, and on busy days it did. Planters, speculators, and brokers gathered there to conduct the transactions that kept Alabama's economy alive. Human beings were sold there 3 days a week, traded alongside cotton futures, warehouse contracts, and shares in riverboat companies. Everything was negotiable. Everything had a price. Everything was reduced to numbers written in leather-bound ledgers that tracked profit and loss, while never acknowledging the moral collapse that made such accounting possible. The auctioneer that morning was Silas Whitmore, 51 years old, with a gravel-rough voice and a reputation for merciless efficiency. He had overseen more than 8,000 sales in his career and took pride in his ability to read a room, to sense when bidders were nearing their limit, and to squeeze the highest possible price from every transaction. His commission depended on final figures, and he had perfected methods for creating competition even when demand was weak. A carefully timed pause, a pointed remark aimed at a hesitant bidder, a casual reference to another buyer's interest. These were his tools, and he used them with surgical precision. The morning progressed normally until around 10:30, when a side door opened and 3 men entered, escorting a woman whose presence immediately shifted something fundamental in the room. Conversation did not stop outright, but it changed, becoming quieter and more cautious, as if everyone sensed at once that something abnormal was unfolding. She appeared to be between 30 and 40 years old, though her face made exact age difficult to judge. Her skin was the color of creek-water coffee, and her features suggested a mixed ancestry that might have included African, European, and possibly Creek or Cherokee blood. She stood about 5'7", unusually tall for a woman of any race at the time, and her posture carried a calm that felt almost defiant given where she stood. She wore a plain grey dress, clean but worn, and her hair was pulled back in a simple style that revealed a face marked by unsettling intelligence. But it was her hands that first caused murmurs to ripple through the crowd. They were stained with ink, the kind of marks left by long hours of writing. Her palms bore calluses in places associated with penwork, not field labor or domestic service. To anyone familiar with enslaved labor, those hands told a story that should not have been possible. Alabama law forbade enslaved people from learning to read or write. While some owners secretly violated that rule, they never allowed their property to develop the kind of extensive writing marks this woman displayed. Silas Whitmore stepped down from his platform, his professional composure slipping just long enough to reveal genuine uncertainty. He spoke briefly with the three escorts, examining the documents they handed him, and those close enough later said his expression moved from confusion to disbelief, and then to something close to fear. When he returned to the platform, he held a sealed envelope in his left hand, and his right hand shook slightly as he raised it for silence. The auction floor went quiet with unusual speed. Even the most hardened speculators leaned forward, their instincts telling them something extraordinary was about to happen. "Gentlemen," Whitmore began, his voice lacking its usual authority, "we have before us today a lot that requires special introduction. The woman you see has been designated property number 47. No name provided, age estimated at 35, no recorded history of field labor, household service, or any recognized skilled trade." A voice from the center of the crowd called out, "Then what's she worth, Whitmore? Why waste our time?" Whitmore's jaw tightened. "The opening bid has been set at $8,000. The silence that followed was absolute. $8,000 exceeded what most skilled craftsmen, free or enslaved, would earn in a decade. It equaled the cost of an entire blacksmith operation, or multiple experienced drivers, or enough field hands to work 100 acres of cotton. For a single woman with no documented skills, the figure was absurd. Yet Whitmore did not lower it. Instead, he did something no veteran auction-goer had ever seen. He broke the seal on the envelope and began reading aloud, his voice growing softer with each line as though lowering his volume might soften the impact of what he was revealing. The seller provides the following sworn statement, executed before Judge Harrison Mitchell of Montgomery County on October 4th of this year. The property designated number 47 possesses knowledge of exceptional value to parties concerned with financial dealings, property ownership, and matters of personal reputation. This knowledge has been verified through demonstration to 5 witnesses whose identities must remain confidential for their protection. The purchaser will receive, in addition to standard documentation, a private letter explaining the nature and extent of this knowledge, along with guidance for its proper use. Confusion in the room began to sour into something darker. Men shouted questions. What knowledge? What demonstration? What letter? Whitmore raised his hand, then continued reading, his words later whispered in Montgomery parlors for years, always too quietly for servants to hear. The seller states that the property possesses complete and perfect recall of every document, ledger, letter, contract, promissory note, deed, will, and financial record she has ever seen. Her memory functions with precision equal to photographic reproduction. She can recite any text word for word, page by page, regardless of length or complexity. She can reproduce calculations, balances, and transaction details years after first observing them. This ability has been tested extensively and found to be without error or known limit. A heavier silence settled over the auction floor, one filled with implications every man prese. NT understood instantly. In an economy built on credit, where fortunes rested on paper promises, where deeds could be disputed and debts conveniently forgotten, a person with flawless memory of financial records represented a kind of power that went far beyond ordinary value. Whitmore continued. The seller further states that during her years of service in multiple households and commercial offices in Montgomery and surrounding counties, the property was present during the creation, review, and storage of thousands of documents believed by their authors to be private. She has observed account books, personal letters, financial agreements, and materials whose contents, if revealed to interested parties, would hold value beyond easy calculation. The implications were now unmistakable, and the room erupted. Some men shouted in anger, others in fear, others with a hungry excitement as they imagined what owning such a living archive could mean. A few pushed toward the exits, faces pale, likely terrified their own secrets might be among those this woman carried in her mind. When the noise finally eased, Whitmore read the final and most disturbing line: "The property will cooperate fully with her legal owner, providing all requested information accurately and completely. She has been conditioned to understand that her well-being depends entirely on her usefulness and discretion. The seller guarantees the accuracy of all information and accepts no responsibility for consequences resulting from its use. The opening bid remains $8,000. Do I hear 8,000? For 10 seconds, no one moved. Then a hand rose at the back of the room, belonging to James Delacroix, a cotton factor with operations across 4 counties. 8,000, he said evenly. 9,000 came instantly from Thomas Sheridan, a merchant banker who financed half the Black Belt plant. Asians. What followed was unlike any auction Whitmore had ever run. The bids climbed at a terrifying pace, driven not by calculation but by fear and the desperate desire to control what this woman represented. 10,000, 12,000, 15,000. Men who had arrived intending to buy labor found themselves competing for something far more dangerous. A human being who carried enough secrets to ruin reputations, bankrupt dynasties, and overturn property claims thought secure for generations. At 18,000, only 5 bidders remained. The crowd split between those still bidding, faces tight with strain, and those watching in stunned silence, realizing the winner would become the most dangerous man in Montgomery. Then a voice near the side wall spoke. 20,000. The speaker's face was partly hidden by the brim of his hat, his clothes expensive but deliberately unremarkable. The certainty in his tone suggested a bid he knew would not be challenged. The remaining men did quick mental calculations, weighing credit limits and survival, then lowered their hands one by one. Whitmore struck the hammer. Sold to the gentleman by the wall. The winner moved forward slowly as the crowd parted around him, as if closeness itself carried risk. Up close he appeared in his late 40s, weathered by travel but with the soft hands of a man who did not labor physically. His clothing spoke of wealth without drawing attention. The paperwork took 90 minutes. Drafts were verified, documents prepared, witnesses secured. Throughout it all, property number 47 stood motionless, her expression unchanged, her eyes still fixed beyond the room. Men tried to question her, she did not respond. When the buyer unlocked the iron cuffs, she did not react. He gave her a shawl. She draped it over her shoulders with practiced ease and followed him out into the October light. 3 days later, questions spread through Montgomery. Who was the buyer? Where had he taken her? What would he do with knowledge powerful enough to destroy half the state's elite? The bank confirmed only that the funds were legitimate, drawn from an account tied to a timber company whose listed address belonged to a mill closed for 2 years. The name Marcus Webb appeared nowhere else. The escorts vanished. The witnesses could not be found. And slowly, as people dug into the woman's past, a truth emerged that should never have existed at all. Some of them carry secrets you have memorized, and they cannot allow you to exist as someone else's property. They will come for you. Some will try to buy you. Some will threaten you. Some will try to kill you and anyone who stands in their way. You are now the most dangerous person in Alabama. Delilah spoke for the first time since the auction. Her voice was soft, calm, and perfectly steady. I have always been the most dangerous person in Alabama. They just didn't realize it until today. Webb looked at her more carefully, forced to rethink everything he believed. He had assumed she was simply trapped by circumstance, a woman caught in a nightmare she never chose. But the way she spoke suggested planning, not accident. Control, not helplessness. You wanted this, he said slowly. You wanted the auction. You wanted everyone to know what you can do. Delilah smiled, and it was the same expression people had struggled to describe at the auction. It looked like satisfaction, but felt sharper, colder. Knowledge demands payment, she said. For 15 years they took value from me. They used my memory to settle arguments, confirm debts, protect their land, and fix their mistakes. They treated me like an object, something to use and forget, so I decided to show them what I really am, not a tool, a weapon, and now they will pay for every secret I carry. Webb felt a weight settle in his chest. What price? Delilah stepped toward the window, staring into the darkness where danger might already be moving. They think owning me gives them control over the secrets I hold, but information does not obey ownership. Once people know that secrets can be remembered perfectly, once they understand that privacy disappears when the wrong person is watching, trust collapses. How does a planter bargain with his factor if he fears every word is being remembered? How does a banker lend money if he suspects his ledgers are already memorized? How do they continue living once they understand that privacy was always an illusion? She turned back to Webb. Her face showed something between satisfaction and sorrow. I am not a weapon you can point at your enemies. I am a weapon that has already exploded. The damage is done. The auction was enough. Now we wait and watch it fall apart. Over the next weeks, Webb learned she was right. The auction sent shockwaves through Montgomery's business world. Men who had bid on Delilah began demanding investigations into their rivals. Men who had not bid began wondering what secrets she held about them. Fear spread faster than disease. Lawyers panicked over conversations held in front of servants. Bankers hid account books as if moving them could erase what had already been seen. Planters accused one another of stolen information, even though none could explain how. 3 weeks after the auction, James Delacroix was found dead in his Commerce Street office. The coroner ruled it suicide. A gun lay in his hand. A letter sat on his desk. But friends said the handwriting looked wrong, shaky, forced. His account books vanished and were never found. In November, Thomas Sheridan fled Montgomery in the middle of the night, leaving behind his wife and children. His bank later discovered evidence of long-term embezzlement, documented so neatly it felt arranged. In December, William Crane died when his carriage overturned on a road he had traveled safely for decades. The ground beneath the wheels had been weakened, but no one was ever charged. Among his belongings was an unfinished letter, describing his fear that someone was watching all of them. And then there was the strangest part. Webb and Delilah disappeared completely. No sightings, no trail, no proof they were alive or dead. It was as if they had never existed. Rumors filled the silence. Some said Webb sold Delilah's secrets in Washington. Others claimed he killed her immediately. Another story insisted she killed Webb and vanished north. Years later, the truth emerged, and it was more disturbing than any rumor. Delilah had been planning far longer than anyone imagined. The auction was only one move. In 1864, as Sherman advanced through the South, a Union officer named Colonel Benjamin Hastings received an unexpected visitor. A woman of mixed race requested a private meeting. She carried papers identifying her as free. They looked real enough. She called herself Delilah. Webb. She claimed to hold intelligence valuable to the Union. She said she had spent years in Montgomery, listening to Confederate officers and businessmen speak freely in her presence. She said she remembered everything. Hastings tested her. He showed her a Confederate dispatch once and took it away. She recited it word for word without error. She answered questions about supply routes, finances, and political alliances with frightening accuracy. Everything checked out. Hastings brought her to Washington. What she revealed crippled Confederate funding, exposed secret trade routes, and shortened the war by months. Thousands of lives were saved. When the war ended, Delilah vanished again. Some said she lived in northern cities. Some said Canada. In 1893, historian Margaret Holloway interviewed an elderly woman named Sarah Mitchell, who had known Delilah personally. Delilah was not her real name, Sarah said. Names were taken too easily to matter. She learned to read from a Quaker woman who taught enslaved people in secret. The woman was arrested, jailed, and died before release. Before she died, she sent Delilah a message. Use what you've learned, make them pay. And she did. She positioned herself carefully. She listened, she waited, she planned the auction, she wanted them afraid. After freedom, she sent letters reminding families what she remembered. Some paid, some refused. Those who refused often lost everything. She lived well, not because of a man, because of memory. The last known letter attributed to her ends with words that history never forgot. They believed they owned my body, and therefore my mind, but memory cannot be owned. Knowledge cannot be chained. Some call it revenge. I call it accounting. Delilah's story reminds us that power is not only held in money or force. Sometimes it waits quietly, watching, remembering, until the bill finally comes due.